Has anybody ever seen this movie before? Office Space? Okay. No. That's where this very old meme is from. If you get a chance, if you see it on somewhere, it's from the '90s, but it's a very funny movie. Um, so all right, so motivation. This is one of those topics that you all know what motivation is, and then when we start talking about it in the psychological sense, people are like, I don't understand what it means to be motivated. I guess you do. Okay. All right. Motivation is any sort of need or desire that directs or energizes a behavior. Okay. Anything that gets you off your ass and doing something, okay, is motivation and is a motivating factor. Um, we are going to talk about this in terms of today. What we're going to cover are different theories of motivation that, all these different theories in psychology basically attempt to explain different behaviors. Right? That's what these theories do. We are going to go from trying to explain some of our most basic behaviors, what motivates some of our most basic behaviors, to what motivates some of our more complex behaviors. We're going to talk about biological motivators, things that are motivating factors that are innate and needed for survival. We're going to talk about what are called stimulus motivators, which are things that are innate but not needed for survival, such as our natural curiosity. And then we're going to talk about what are called learned motivators, which are exactly what they sound like. Motivators that things that we learn are motivating. Okay, and all these different theories explain these different behaviors. And then we are going to talk about why we eat. What are the motivating factors? What are specifically the biological underpinnings for why we eat? And then we are going to talk about sex, okay, and sexual motivation. So if you get awkward, be ready to get awkward, all right? Because I don't get awkward talking about this stuff anymore, but we're going to talk about different motivating factors there, what happens, and whatnot. Okay. All right, so I'm not going to show skit, but has anybody ever seen this Chris Farley SNL skit? Okay, Matt Foley. It's probably the most famous SNL skit ever, I would think. And Chris Farley, who probably a lot of you all don't even know who he is. Hopefully you do. Hopefully you've at least seen Tommy Boy. Okay, but if you want to watch it, I have it linked on there. It has a very iconic line in it from SNL, the van down by the river line. So different theories of motivation. Now, again, each one of these attempts to explain different behaviors or a group of different behaviors and why we do certain things. The first theory is the most basic, okay, what is called instinct theory. Okay, all of these theories explain different behaviors through the lens of the different perspectives. You remember the perspectives: biological, evolutionary, sociocultural, humanistic, cognitive, psychoanalytic, and behavioral. I think that's all of them. Okay. Instinct theory attempts to explain behaviors from the evolutionary perspective. So, does anybody have a guess? What do you think instinct theory, what are the motivating factors behind a lot of these behaviors. When it comes to evolution, most of our behavior is based around what? All right, Arnav says, yep, Arnav, Avanti, yep, based around survival. And yep, Taylor's got it, survival and reproduction. Good job. All right, so an instinct is an innate and consistent pattern. All right, it's a pattern of behavior of complex behaviors. Okay, complex behaviors, that's what makes it different than a reflex. Reflexes are non-complex. Okay, there's a spinal cord of complex behaviors that is performed the same by all members of a species. All members do this thing the same way. And it's complex, but it's not like there's like a whole lot of cognitive involvement. It's just kind of like this species does this thing. Such as, who remembers what imprinting is? Anybody remember? Aiden, you remember what it is? Aiden, what is it? You have your hand up. Yeah, yep, yep. Where with a lot of animals, humans don't do this, but with a lot of animals, baby animals will attach to the first thing that they see. Okay, that's an instinct that they have. They just say, "Oh, I see this thing. It must be my caregiver." You know, salmon swimming upstream. Like salmon swimming upstream is not a conscious decision that they make. They're not like sitting there and they're like, oh shit, he's going upstream. Should we follow? Like it's just something that like there's like they just go. Okay. And they just do it. They swim upstream, they mate, they reproduce, and then they come back down. Okay. Now, some of them are going to die in the process, but that's natural selection. Okay. And so a lot of these instinctual behaviors are just naturally selected out. Like here, you'll see, here's a video of salmon swimming upstream. And you'll see, whether they don't necessarily realize it, but they're risking their life doing it, but they just do it. All right, so those fish, they just do that. They don't know why they're doing it. They just do it, and it helps ensure their survival. Birds flying south is another instinct. It's not like all the birds got together and they're like, "Oh, dude, I heard about this. There's this real cool place that we could all go." They just started. They just do it. Anybody in here have a dog that like humps a lot of things? Okay, all right. Mia, you say yours does. Okay, anybody else have dog that humps a lot? Okay. Anybody know why dogs hump? Anyone? It's not because they're horny, okay? They really just it's just that's just when they're in heat. Yeah, it's a sign of superior. It's to show dominance. Okay, one of my parents has a dog that'll hump stuff, and then you like kick it off, and it just continues air humping for a little while afterwards because it's just like Cash is just doing it. He doesn't even realize why he's doing it. Um, you know, humans do not have a whole lot of instincts left. What they think is that our cerebral cortex sort of overrides those instincts. Instincts are more so for animals that don't necessarily have cognition. We do have a few like fight or flight is instinctual behavior. Babies having stranger anxiety is instinctual behavior. Our natural instinct to nurture is. I think I've mentioned this before, but if you ever watch the Zapruder film, which is the film of John F. Kennedy being shot, right after he's shot in the head, Jackie Kennedy climbs onto the back of the convertible, and it looks like she's trying to get away, but actually, what she's doing is she's trying to pick up a piece of his skull that was sitting on the back of the convertible, and that's just a natural instinctive behavior to try to like put John back together. Okay. All right. So, any questions on instincts? Just evolutionary patterns of behavior that help us survive and reproduce. All right. Now, if I were to ask you all, how many of you all think, and use the little like emoji, um, use the little like thumbs up emoji or whatnot. How many of you all think that if you were starving to death and this was your only option, that you would eat another person? Okay. And let's say the other person is already dead. All right. How many of you all think, or put it in the chat, say that you would or whatnot? How many of you all think that you would? Depends on who and how important it is. Well, you're starving to death. Yes, Lillian, I'll repeat the question, but it'd probably be good for you not to just be having a full on conversation with somebody else while I'm doing this. Okay. All right. How many of you was already dead? Yep. Couldn't kill another person for food. All right. Okay. Yeah. All right. So, it's a nice sentiment for you all to say no, you would not. In reality, if you were starving to death, pretty much everybody in here would. Okay, because when you are starving to death, there is a biological function that kicks in that says I need to eat no matter what. Okay, no matter what it is. Um, and there are a lot of historical examples of this. Okay, the Donner Party in 1848, trying to get to California, they took what they thought was a shortcut, and they got stuck in the Sierra Nevada mountains in winter. Ended up having to eat the dead. Okay, there's a great book about it called "The Indifferent Stars Above," if you're interested in it. And then more recently than that, and I believe 1974, the Chilean rugby team that was flying across the Andes and their plane crashed and they were stuck in the Andes for almost a year, I think, and they ended up having to eat the dead. Okay. What happens when you are starving to death? Your brain, the chemistry of your brain changes, and if you basically have a biological need that says by any means necessary. Okay. This theory of motivation that explains innate biological needs. Okay. Instinct is more these evolutionary things. Drive reduction theory is how we fulfill our biological needs, how we're motivated to fulfill our biological needs. Okay. All right. When we have a need, such as hunger, okay, when you are hungry, that creates what is called a drive, which is a desire to do something. And it is what is called an internal need or a push, an internal push to do something. Okay. And that drive motivates us to fulfill that need so that we can maintain homeostasis. Now, does anybody know what is homeostasis? All right, keeping your body stable. Yep. Okay. State of equilibrium. Good word. Yep. Listen, homeostasis is just internal balance. When we're hungry, we have a drive to eat. When we're thirsty, we have a drive to drink water. Okay. We're motivated. We have an internal need for it that pushes us towards it. When we're cold, we have a drive to get warm. So we put on a jacket. When we're sexually aroused, we have a drive to do that. That's why it's called our sex drive. Okay, because it's an internal push to do something. So all of these is just our motivation to maintain our biological equilibrium. And if it comes to eating another person, because it's called drive reduction, because you are trying to reduce the impact of that drive. The drive is what pushes us to do it. Drive is pushes us, but we want to reduce that drive. We want to go back to just having to just being at homeostasis. When we aren't at homeostasis, we have a drive to go back to being homeostatic. So does that make sense, Arno? That makes sense? Yeah, okay. So drive reduction theory, a biological push to reduce the impact of that drive, to get back to equilibrium. Push, internal push, and homeostasis are the keywords here that you would look for. If you see homeostasis in regards to theories of motivation, you know it's drive reduction theory. You'll see this sometimes abbreviated as DRT. Okay. All right. Trying to go quick. All right. Are there any questions there? So these first two theories explain sort of innate survival behaviors that are linked to survival, whether it's evolutionary behaviors or just our internal, maintaining our internal balance. But these do not explain other what are called secondary motives. Okay. Secondary motives are things that motivate us that are either what are called stimulus motives, which is things that are innate, but they're not necessarily necessary for survival, or things that are learned, such as our natural curiosity is a stimulus motive. Okay, our need to play, our need for affiliation, our want of power. All these things are either innate, but not necessary for survival or learned. Now we have talked about these before, but we have called them something different. Anybody know what these are the exact same as? We talked about them in Unit 4. Things that we learn are motivating. All right, yep. They are reinforcers, but these ones would specifically be called what type of reinforcers if we learn that they are motivating? All right, it might not be, yeah, they could be positive, they could be negative, it could be it could be avoiding punishment. Yeah, but these are referred to as conditioned or secondary reinforcers. So we're going to cover two of these theories. There are five theories. We're going to get to the fifth one next class. All right, incentive theory. This is again another one of those things where people like you all know what an incentive is. An incentive is like getting something good or avoiding something bad for doing something. When you got a gold star in kindergarten, and if you got enough of them, you got to pick an eraser that smelled like bubble gum out of a jar. That was an incentive. Okay. Incentive theory is a behavioral theory. It says that we are motivated by either by things in the environment, whether it is getting something good or avoiding something bad that motivates our behavior. Okay. Getting a gold star was an incentive for doing whatever you got it for. These are what are referred to as pull. Incentives are external pull factors. Whereas drive reduction is an internal push, incentive theory is something in the environment that pulls you towards doing something. So who remembers, those of you who've taken world history, anybody, what is an example of a pull factor from world history? Jobs, moving somewhere because there are more jobs. That's an incentive. That's an environmental factor that pulls you toward, that motivates you and pulls you towards doing something. Incentive theory could also just be referred to as what? What is this the exact same as? Where we learn to behave in a certain way because we get something good or we avoid something bad. Yep, Eric, that's correct. Anybody else? It is conditioning, but what type of conditioning? The avoidance of something bad or getting something good for a behavior that either increases or decreases a specific behavior. Operant, yes, this is the exact same as operant conditioning. Okay. Now, drive reduction and incentive oftentimes work together. If you think about it, if you're hungry, you have that hunger drive to go get food. And then if you're also hungry and then you smell a pizza, all right, the smell of the pizza is an incentive. The hunger drive is the drive. And these things together, when you have a drive coupled with an incentive, it makes it even more motivating to do. Okay. And it's amazing what we will do for some sort of incentive, such as, are there any questions here? I got a quick video. Okay. Such as what people will do to get something called fantastic delights. All right, so how many of you all would push a button 5,000 times to get a box of rice crackers? Okay. It's amazing though what people will do to get something for free. Like the richest people in the world will still like fight over like a free t-shirt from like a t-shirt cannon at a basketball game. Okay. So because of that incentive, humans love getting stuff for free. All right. So last thing. Okay. Probably keep you about 10 minutes long, but your asynchronous work won't take you long. All right. Finally, optimal arousal theory. Looking at why we just sometimes do things just for the hell of it, just sometimes for no reason at all. Um, how many of you all's like, your idea, let's say it's Saturday night, right? And how many of your all's ideal Saturday night is lying in bed, maybe with your dog watching Netflix? Like you're completely content, just like chilling at home by yourself, watching TV. All right, whose ideal Saturday night is that? Okay. Yeah, you can like put your hand up or put a thumbs up in the emoji thing. All right. And then how many of you all like on a Saturday night, like you got to be out doing something. Like you're sitting there, you're like, all right, it's Saturday night, texting all your friends, what's good? Let's get litty, blah, 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 whatever. Okay, all right. Who else ideal Saturday night is that? Like you got to be doing something on Saturday night. Or you're just going to be sitting, like, I'm so bored, I'm so bored. Okay, all right, yeah. All right. That's how I am. Okay. I'm not good at like just sitting around. Quarantine has been tough. All right. This is what is called optimal arousal theory, which is a cognitive theory of motivation that basically looks at what do we do to maintain our optimal level of alertness. What are we motivated to do to maintain our optimal level of alertness? Or to put it even more simply, what do we do to avoid boredom? And what is our level? What is the ideal level of excitement, arousal, alertness that we want at any given moment? Now, this very much depends on the person and the situation. We want differing levels of alertness in different situations. And some people get bored a lot easier than other people do. How many of you all like if you're watching like a mindless like stupid TV, like watching like The Bachelor or like Southern Charm or something? What do you usually do while you are watching like a mindless show like that? Yeah. All right. Yep. You go on your phone. All right, because you kind of need a little bit more stimulation. That show doesn't involve a whole lot of cognitive activity. And so you go on your phone because you can kind of pay attention to both things at once. Whereas if you're watching like a really serious movie or like a scary movie or something, you're more focused in because that movie has just made you more alert in general. How many of you all, when you're like sitting in class, you just kind of like mindlessly doodle as you're listening? Okay. All right. I do that. Okay, I do my signature over and over. Like if I'm, and it actually it helps. Okay, I focus. I'm ADD, and yeah, I focus a lot better by having that kind of extra stimulation. Um, if you tap your foot, okay, or just like kind of doing that gives you sort of that extra level of alertness. Right, this is optimal arousal theory. Now, how many of you all would consider yourself like adrenaline junkies? Like you like to do like exciting things. Like you like to go on like roller coasters or you want to go skydiving, okay? Or you like want to travel the world, okay? All of us have sort of that different level of what's called, level of exploration that we want. And so here's a quick little video. Some of you may have seen it. It's Jimmy Fallon and Kevin Hart. And Jimmy Fallon likes roller coasters. Kevin Hart does not like roller coasters. And he gets Kevin Hart to go on a roller coaster, and you're going to see the difference in their reaction, right? Because of how their sort of optimal level of arousal. All right, so you can see there just totally different reactions because one kind of has a higher optimal level of arousal. Or has anybody ever seen the documentary Free Solo about Alex Honnold, the climber that free climbed El Capitan, which is a sheer rock granite face in Yosemite, climbed it without any ropes. Um, if you want to be anxious for an hour and a half, but it is an amazing documentary. Okay, but it is absolutely wild. Okay, and that is a whole different level of optimal arousal. That's like a psychopathic level of it. All right, so last thing, what they have found in terms of optimal arousal and performance is that we perform our best when we are at a moderate level of arousal, okay, when we are at a moderate level of stress, okay? Think about like when you play sports, all right, you want to practice enough to feel confident going into the game, but you also like to have a little bit of like pre-game jitters, right? It kind of keeps you like focused. All right. How many of you all, when you get like super stressed, you like shut down and you just like can't do anything? You just like sit there and like stare. Okay. That's what happens to me. All right. We found that when our stress level gets too high, our performance goes down. But then how many of you all, when you get like so bored that you literally can't do anything other than just be bored at that moment? Like you can't even get motivated to be anything other than bored. Okay. All right. We found that when our stress level's too low, right, we don't perform well. All right. So it obviously depends on the task and the person, but they have found that a moderate level of stress is where we perform our best, what is called flow. Okay. And when our arousal level's too high, we find ways to raise it. Like if you're bored in class and you sit there and you're trying to talk to somebody when you're not supposed to. Okay. And then when our arousal level's too high, we try to find a way to lower it. Breathing exercises, whatnot. This is what is called the Yerkes-Dodson principle of arousal. It's the inverted U. Optimal performance is when we are at a moderate level of stress. Yes, Avanti, that book is where that idea of flow came from. Okay. Flow is like a new psychological term, but yeah, I think that book is called Flow, isn't it? Yeah. All right, so does anybody have any questions about that? Oh, I meant to continue sharing. All right, so as I said, all I want for you to do for asynchronous is I have a little assignment here. Should be easy, and it'll actually help you because you're going to come up with real life examples. Am I lagging? No? Huh, okay. Seems like my internet just slowed down a lot. So all I want for you to do, give a specific example of when you have been motivated to do something in regards to each of the following theories: drive reduction theory, incentive theory, and then optimal arousal theory. Just give an example from your own life for each one of those. Okay? So it should be pretty easy. All right, guys. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to stay on. But if not, you are free to go. And I will see you all on Thursday.